We are back inside City Hall, keeping our focus on tomorrow's primary elections. Joining me now to talk about all of that, we've got two members of this week's Consultants Corner. Democratic consultant Nick Smith is with us, who previously served as first deputy public advocate under Jumaane Williams. Also joining us is J.C. Polanco, a longtime political analyst and attorney, who's also an assistant professor at the University of Mount St. Vincent. Thank you both for being here. Great to see you.
Thank you.
So now, assuming Emerson College's poll is reasonably accurate, what dynamic would you say has enabled Mamdani to close the gap with Andrew Cuomo?
Young people all the way. So for me, I've seen all the polls, including the Emerson poll, and my key phrase is trends matter. So I think the former governor, he's still the front runner, but I think Mamdani has probably eclipsed him maybe by a point. It's in the margin of error. Mm-hmm. So if you are a candidate for mayor, you want to have a trend of upward mobility. If you're Cuomo, you have nowhere to go but possibly down. And I think there's concern about that. So day before the election, if I'm Mamdani, I'm feeling good, my trends are up. If I'm Cuomo, I'm very concerned today.
Right. And of course, Democrats have tried to rely on youthful energy and enthusiasm, and they're disappointed every time. Yeah. That's mostly at the national level. Right?
Yeah, but this is a little different. You know, I see Assemblyman Mamdani very popular with my students. He's taken over my social media. I mean, you could put "I like Mamdani" and get 1,000 new friends. You say "I don't like Mamdani," you lose 1,000 friends. So it's very interesting. Talk about the guy with the $1 billion smile. I mean, the fact is that he's exciting a lot of young people that I've never seen before interested in politics. And he's leading the polls. I see he's leading with white voters in New York City. And he's cut into some of the Latino support. And there's a big generational divide with Latinos. The older Latinos like me would tend to be more centrist and more conservative. The younger Latinos see AOC as the second coming of Jesus in some point. So it's very interesting to see. I still think that Governor Cuomo, when you take a look at all the polls, Governor Cuomo is leading, and I think there's a good chance that he's going to continue leading to tomorrow. He just has so much support, so much name recognition, and then with those debates that you had here in New York 1 that I thought were phenomenal.
What do you think is the turning point? In other words, if young people are interested, that's good and that's new and that's interesting.
Yeah.
What would it take for that to be sort of decisive? Is it like a sort of a systemic change where a new cohort is becoming the active voting majority in New York? Or is it just kind of a fluke with this candidate?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's any systemic change yet. I think there's much excitement that the polls are bearing out. But I think with many elections, and both of you are getting at it, young folks turn out a little bit less than folks over 40 and 45 years old. Mm-hmm. So the Cuomo camp, I know they're banking on Black and Latino voters over 40 and 45 years old. And they're probably thinking, yeah, there's excitement, he's promising some stuff, but they're not going to show up tomorrow. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I think that what's exciting to young people is that he's one of them. The guy's 33 years old. I think I have genes that old, to be honest with you guys. So he's one of them, and he's exciting them. So we're going to see them come out. But I tell you this, I think Governor Cuomo's going to have a lot of support from the older folks, but there's a whole other group of people in the city that are going to come full force tomorrow, and they're going to be the Jewish voters. Jewish voters know that they have a friend in former Governor Cuomo, and quite frankly, this may be the first time, as I speak to some of the Jewish voters across the city, that Jewish voters may feel as if they don't have a friend in City Hall if he were to win. When he talks about globalizing the intifada, and that may mean different things to different people. If there were any other ethnic group, would be shocked. Imagine someone saying, I don't care about Black Lives Matter. Oh, the hell with undocumented immigration. We'd be like, how's he ever going to be mayor of New York City? But it seems as if the young people may have forgotten that this city still, that matters. And I think that's going to be an issue for Assemblyman Mamdani tomorrow.
An interesting dynamic I'd love to get both of your takes on is that ranked choice voting, one of the features is supposed to be that it discourages negative campaigning. It's supposed to encourage, some of these alliances that we've seen. Okay, that has happened. On the other hand, it also really results in what we're seeing with Cuomo and Mamdani, each telling voters, don't rank that person at all. Disqualify that person. Under no circumstances should you vote for them. And there's been more attack ads as a result. That's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think if Mamdani pulls it off, it'll be narrow. He will have to thank Brad Lander and Adrian Adams in particular. Right. Those two camps, I know he cross-endorsed Lander, and then I think he fundraised for the speaker.
Yes.
If those two camps trend his way, he could narrowly eclipse the former governor. But the reality is, the former governor is still the heavyweight. The
It sounds like we should tell the reformers, it's like, okay, there's a lot of things to recommend, ranked choice voting, but don't keep saying that it's going to lessen negative campaigning, because this has been pretty rough.
Oh, you see it every day. It's just nonstop negativity on both sides, right? On the top two candidates, and a lot of independent expenditures to that point, and just hammering it down, the idea of no voting and these alliances being formed. This is one of the externalities of reformers. They mean well, but they don't think about the impact that some of these reforms may have. I'll give you a good reform. Open a primary so that independents like me get a say. How's that for a reform?
Let JC in.
And think about this. Think about the low turnout that we see in the Bronx. I know everybody's very excited, but still 96% of Democrats haven't voted. They're sitting at home still. And in the Bronx, it's just dismal. I cannot believe we have such a record low early voting turnout in the Bronx, and that's shameful.
Presumably that will change, or I should say, presumably the fact that there's a competitive borough president race up in the Bronx, I would assume would mean that there's going to be some active polling operations up there, right?
Well, I hope so. I hope that my home borough comes out and really starts voting.
Yeah, I mean, the political style is to do those parades, right? To have the caravans of the trucks and all of that stuff. Has that been going on?
That has been going on. We see a very good campaign right now between Borough President Gibson and Councilman Salamanca for that important position.
Okay, so we shall see. And then, of course, in Brooklyn, there's a pretty good race going on as well. I mean, I've seen it mostly in the mail, not so much, anything else, because Brooklyn is so big. You kind of have to run it like almost like a citywide campaign.
Absolutely. Brooklyn is the largest borough, and you really have to have money raised and get out there and really get on the ground. So this top-down, run the attack ads only get you so far. You have to be grassroots and get out there and press the flesh.
Okay, we've got more to talk about. We're going to do that after a short break. Then we'll be back with these consultants. Stay with us. Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where I'm once again joined by this week's Consultants Corner. We have Democratic consultant Nick Smith and political analyst J.C. Polanco. Here's another reform that is gotten a lot of attention. It's going to be talked about for a while, which is moving the elections so that our citywide elections, which are in what's called the off year, 2025, move it to coincide with the presidential election. The idea being then you'll get a lot more turnout because everybody turns out for president. The downside of that, of course, is that presidential elections have a whole different set of issues that have nothing to do with, rat containers in New York City, sanitation and recycling policy, affordable housing, and everything else. What do you think about that?
That's fascinating. I wonder if that reform would advantage incumbents, because you have a presidential race and you are going to have much more turnout. And if you haven't studied all the candidates, even down ballot candidates, you may just show up and pick the name you know. So I'm not sure about it. Maybe it's a cost-saving measure, but I wonder if it advantages incumbents.
Well, it's the reformers who are always saying all we have to do is drive more turnout, and of course there's these unintended consequences that come.
Yeah, reform. That's funny. These are Democrats. I like you guys a lot. Right? I'm an independent.
We love you too.
I left the GOP a long time ago, but I got to tell you, this was a power grab. Listen. You know this is a blue state. This is a Democratic state. You put the elections in a time when there's a Democratic presidential candidate that will 100% get elected. You make it much more difficult for Republicans outside of these safe areas to have a shot at winning, because there was a time where the national focus was here and the local focus about where your garbage was getting picked up, local crime issues was here, and there would be Democrats that would vote for the Republican at times. This makes it so that almost exclusively Democrats are going to have the upper hand all over the state, and that's what happened here. This wasn't a reform agenda, similar to the reform agenda of allowing for people with people with working papers that are not citizens to vote here in New York City. I remember that being reformed. That was mumbo-jumbo nonsense, so that Democrats could have even more control of city government. There was no intended.
But I thought Republicans were all about cost saving, saving money.
That's not about cost saving.
If you bring those two elections together,
it's that same reform impulse we were talking about before. Like, let's maximize output. Let's maximize turnout, no matter what. Right. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if the issues are lost, even if it's a foregone conclusion.
I'll give you reform. Let us independents vote in primaries. This is insane. You're going to have Errol, you have 5 or 6% turnout in some of these districts. So it's closed to Democrats only. Nobody decides.
But that's not the reason.
But they should have open primaries like everywhere else in the state. But that's not everywhere else in the country.
But you still won't get the.
You know when it's going to happen? When DSA candidates keep picking off assembly members and senators. Somebody up there in Albany is going to say, maybe we should let those independents have a say. But until that happens.
Well, speaking of independents, the sitting mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, is going to announce his reelection formally later this week. Where is he in all of this? I mean, he's got to be. Who was he hoping wins the Democratic nomination tomorrow?
I think he hopes Mamdani wins the Democratic nod. I've watched him beat up on left candidates for the last several years, and I think he'll come out and say you have a former governor who is trying to rehab his image. You have a Mamdani who is, pushing pie-in-the-sky plans, and I'm the straight-down-the-middle, moderate candidate that can save the city of New York. That's what he'll probably say.
Interesting theory. What do you think?
I think Nick is absolutely right. I think Mayor Adams is at a botanica with a candle somewhere praying for Mamdani to win because he'll point out to the fact that the guy has no experience. You go from an assembly office to try to run the city of New York with 350,000 employees, $1 trillion GDP. I mean, it's such a learning curve. I have it. I'm the incumbent. Vote for me. And this Jewish question is going to be an issue in November that Assembly Mamdani is going to have to answer if he were to win tomorrow. And I think that Mayor Adams has the best shot against an Assembly Mamdani, has no shot against Governor Cuomo winning tomorrow.
So this is interesting. I don't want to make too many comparisons to the brilliant Barack Obama, but he was a state senator, same kind of rank, U.S. Senate president in a very short span, did a pretty good job. So, there's experience and there's vision.
You're not doing that. You're not comparing Obama to Mamdani.
I'm just saying.
No, he's absolutely right.
He's not absolutely right.
I absolutely am.
The very same arguments were made in 2008,
I remember
2007, 2008 against Barack Obama. They were saying he's a state senator. He doesn't know anything. He hasn't done anything. He's not ready to be the commander in chief. He has no military experience. He has no corporate experience, and all that was true.
Very different from this. We're talking about an assemblyman out in Queens with a staff of 3 or 4. You're going to compare that to a U.S. senator? You're going to compare that to a U.S. senator, Nick.
We're also talking about someone who was a state senator, went to the U.S. Senate and the presidency, and with the mayor's race. So you can make the comparison.
It's very different. And we got to know President Obama much longer than a 6-month campaign.
But that's a movie
Here's the real point. What if the voters decide that what you think is important as far as, sort of credentials doesn't matter? Right? We've seen it now with Donald Trump, who had no military experience, had never been elected to anything. You saw it with, you can go back to, I was just talking the other day, Fiorello LaGuardia was a congressman, maximum maybe 10 people on staff. Ed Koch, congressman in 1977, maybe 10 people on staff, maybe 15.
Very different. These are very different. I think what you guys are doing.
Why is that?
You guys are getting into all It's very different. You're going to compare a congressman in office. We're not talking about AOC running for office here. That would have been a much more interesting situation here. We're talking about an assemblyman out in Queens who represents 125,000 people, who wins with a couple of thousand votes, and you're telling me that he is prepared to be the CEO of New York City government. It's an obscene proposal. But you're saying what it doesn't matter.
There's almost no job you could do that would make you prepared.
But that's not true. You have opportunities to manage, and in this case, we have zero management experience. You talk about Mayor Koch. Even De Blasio was public advocate. He was a member. He was a chairman of a committee. He was a councilman. We have a record. He didn't even lead a local Boy Scout association. My goodness. Was there a club
I know about the
anywhere?
I know about the public advocate's office. That is true.
Yeah, right. Leave the public advocate's office alone. This man used to work.
Right, but in any other universe, this race would be Speaker Adams and Governor Cuomo. No doubt about it. I'm very surprised.
You know what? The numbers may fall that way. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And I know you'll be watching along with us. Thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with you. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Be sure to join us tomorrow night.